Hello everyone, and welcome to my Young and the Restless official 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Michael tells Lauren that Billy is pleading with Sally for forgiveness. While Michael Baldwin tells Lauren Fenmore Baldwin at least some of the narrative, Billy Abbott will beg Sally Spector's pardon. When Kyle Abbott and Audra Charles fight in the Jazz Lounge, Jack Abbott and Diane Jenkins Abbott break it up, so Audra makes fun of Kyle because Daddy always saves him. Diane would argue with Audra in her son's place after Jack dragging Kyle away to get sober with coffee. Diane will pretend that Audra is just lashing out since she can never have Kyle the way she wants him, even though Audra will take jabs about Diane's troubled history. Diane will talk about wildcard Billy's declaration of war against Kane Ashby once she joins Kyle and Jack. Now that Billy has changed course once more, Sally will hear and wonder. Billy will yell at his private investigator on the phone to put in more effort to find information on Kane in the park during Wednesday's YNR episode. Sally will consider whether or not to listen to Billy when he calls and invites her to meet. Reminding Sally of their previous discussion, Audra will essentially advise them to not allowing troublesome guys to control their life. Billy will admit that he is aware that Sally alerted Jack and Diane about the AI software plot when she appears at the park overlook. Billy will acknowledge that he initially felt deceived, but he will now realize that he was the one who deceived Sally by thwarting all of their plans. Billy, though, will declare unequivocally that he has changed his mind regarding Kane. Billy will be adamant and question whether Sally can forgive him despite her skepticism. Sally won't be certain she can because she destroyed her entire life and her beloved career for Billy. When Billy doesn't realize that he's the issue, Sally will be upset with herself and unsure of her ability to continue with him. Now that Billy is committed to exacting revenge on Kane, Sally will feel as though he is trading one passion for another. Billy will, however, restate that things are different today and offer that he can make things right. Billy will desire the opportunity to guide Sally to the light at the end of the tunnel because he will see it. When Jack, Diane, and Kyle return, they will talk about how they should be smart and attack Kane first. That entails controlling Billy before everything explodes up and everyone suffers the consequences. Michael will invite Lauren to join him for a romantic meal at Society. Michael will pretend that he only wants to show Lauren how special she is, but Lauren will question if this evening holds good or terrible news. Lauren, however, will ask Michael where he was before to this dinner and whether he is employed by Victor Newman. Lauren fervently hopes that Victor isn't luring him away to anything, as Michael will insist. Lauren will warn that it will be unforgivable and that there will be no turning back if Michael is lying to her and concealing secrets from her. The temporary interruption of Fenmore and Baldwin with an unexpected phone call may relieve Michael, but it won't keep him off the hook for long. Michael will confess that Kane is trying to destroy Genoa City and that he could be the only one who can stop him because Lauren will offer him one more chance to be clean. Sally's displays Billy is helpless against his own demise. Billy is forced to face the fact that he is his own worst enemy, not Kane, as a result of Sally's rejection. When Sally rejected Billy's cries for forgiveness, he was forced to face the consequences. Her adamant rejection revealed a more profound reality. Billy's habit of obsession and self-destruction keeps him engulfed and prevents him from creating the future he says he desires. Billy's confession obsession undercuts. Jason Thompson's character Billy confessed his covert activities with Kane and revealed that Sally had been correct all along. He pleaded for an opportunity to mend their relationship after acknowledging the harm he had caused. Billy was unable to break free from the worldview that ruined them, despite his repentance. He showed Sally that his obsession was far from over by shifting the responsibility to Kane and holding on to the hope that his plan could still be saved. Sally opts out of being recalled in. Sally gave a controlled but decisive reaction. She reminded Billy of the deception and deceit that cost her her job and her confidence in him. His apology seemed meaningless to her. It was just another pledge from a man who cared more about his personal grudges than about her welfare. Sally's rejection was based on clarity rather than rage. She refused to let herself become a casualty of Billy's never-ending conflicts. The price of Billy's demise. Billy feels more alone than ever as a result of Sally's stand. Abbott Communications loses its anchor without her support, and his standing in the family deteriorates even further. More significantly, her rejection demonstrated Billy's strong hold on his own harmful pattern. Even while that battle continues to deprive him of allies, stability, and trust, he is adamant about fighting Kane. For Billy's character to advance, a significant overhaul is required. Jason Thompson's character, Billy Abbott. Billy Abbott, the child man, needs to stop being such a skip-fire train wreck and start acting like a responsible adult. Billy has occasionally appeared to make mature gestures in the past. In the past, there have been times when it truly seemed like Billy was about to mature and organize his life. Unfortunately, Billy keeps reverting to his self-centered failing and misdirected desires. As long as he gets what he wants, he doesn't care about the mayhem he causes. If Billy had ever accomplished something noteworthy, this could be fine, but when was the last time he had a real success? Billy is the epitome of what it means to be a loser. Kane terminated his agreement with Billy because he was too much of a wild card. Billy Flynn's character, Kane Ashby, chose to terminate their contract in the September 18th episode of YNR because he believes Billy is too erratic. Kane's viewpoint is difficult to criticize because Billy genuinely exemplifies that unpredictable nature. However, Billy's attempt to use the AI software to threaten Victor Newman would have failed even if Kane had delivered it as planned. In what world would Victor ever feel scared by Billy's threats? Billy has a reputation for taking big chances that always end in failure. With nothing to show for his efforts, viewers are left to watch Billy hop from one ridiculous endeavor to another. Billy's self-absorbed nature is now causing him and Sally to blow out. At the moment, it appears that Billy's relationship with Sally Spectra is also in danger of ending, which makes it impossible for him to be happy in his personal life. Sally is better off without Billy because of his selfishness, which keeps him from treating her with respect. This might be a good time for the program to make some significant changes and reset Billy's character. Billy frequently presents as an impetuous adolescent in need of direction rather than acting like a responsible adult who has grown from his many errors. Is it time for Billy to grow up and make a more constructive decision? Do you think he can let go of his resentments and mature? The evening in Genoa City carried an unusual heaviness, the kind of atmosphere where tension lingered in every corner and conversations that should have remained whispers instead unfolded with the weight of confessions that could change lives. Michael Baldwin sat across from Lauren Fenmore Baldwin, his tone both cautious and careful, as though every word carried consequences beyond the moment. He began telling her about Billy Abbott's latest spiral, about how Billy had been pleading desperately with Sally Spectra for forgiveness, trying to untangle himself from the web of grudges, betrayals, and obsessions that had consumed him. Lauren, ever perceptive, watched her husband's face as he laid out fragments of the narrative, sensing there was more to the story than Michael was willing to share outright. Michael's recounting painted a picture of a man undone, Billy begging Sally to see beyond his mistakes, his voice shaking with regret, his promises echoing hollow because even as he said them, his fixation on Kane Ashby was growing stronger. At the same time, across town, chaos unfolded at Neil's Jazz Lounge where Kyle Abbott and Audra Charles found themselves embroiled in a heated altercation. Words turned venomous, drinks spilled, and accusations cut deep enough to wound. Jack Abbott and Diane Jenkins Abbott intervened before the scene escalated further, dragging Kyle away to steady him with coffee and clear his head. But Audra, sharp-tongued and unafraid of confrontation, mocked Kyle with biting sarcasm, suggesting that Daddy always came to rescue him when trouble brewed. Diane, fiercely protective, stepped into the line of fire on her son's behalf, refusing to let Audra's cruelty go unanswered. She accused Audra of lashing out because she could never have Kyle the way she wanted him, her jabs tinged with bitterness at Audra's persistence in needling her family. Audra countered by referencing Diane's troubled history, unearthing old scars that Diane had tried desperately to leave buried. Yet Diane held her ground, refusing to let Audra's venom shake her resolve. Later, when she rejoined Jack and Kyle, she shifted the conversation to Billy, wildcard Billy, who had once again declared war on Kane, stirring fresh waves of instability for the Abbott family. Sally, meanwhile, heard whispers of Billy's renewed course of action and found herself wondering whether his pleas for forgiveness were genuine or merely another manipulation cloaked in the language of redemption. Billy, restless and agitated, was soon spotted in the park, yelling into his phone at a private investigator, demanding more effort, more results, more dirt on Kane Ashby. His obsession burned hotter than ever, his voice cutting through the quiet night as though demanding the universe itself bend to his will. Yet in the moments between rage and silence, he placed a call to Sally, his voice softer, imploring, begging her to meet him. Sally hesitated, her heart torn between the echo of past betrayals and the faint hope that maybe, just maybe, Billy meant it this time. Before she went, Audra crossed her path, offering sly advice disguised as friendship. Audra warned Sally not to let men like Billy control her life, reminding her of their earlier conversations where they both agreed toxic men weren't worth the destruction they left behind. But Sally, compelled by a mix of curiosity and the fragile remnants of her connection to Billy, went to the park overlook where he waited, pacing, rehearsing his words. When she arrived, Billy's confession tumbled out in a rush. He admitted he knew she had told Jack and Diane about the AI software plot, confessed that he had felt betrayed at first, but acknowledged that it was he who had betrayed her. He thwarted their plans, undermined their partnership, and in the end, he recognized that Sally had only tried to do the right thing. Still, Billy could not separate his obsession from his apology. He swore he had changed, declared that Kane was no longer just an enemy but a symbol of everything holding him back. He promised Sally that he could make it right, that together they could find a light at the end of the tunnel. But Sally, her heart heavy with disappointment, could not bring herself to accept his words at face value. She reminded him that she had sacrificed her career, her reputation, her sense of self, for him, and in return, he had given her nothing but destruction and chaos. She questioned whether he even realized he was the problem, not Kane. Tears welled in her eyes as she admitted she wasn't sure she had the strength to keep going with him, not when his passion seemed only to transfer from one obsession to another. Billy, desperate, insisted that this time was different, that he saw a future where he could change, where he could bring Sally out of the darkness he had dragged her into. But Sally, with a clarity born of pain, stood her ground. She could not let herself be pulled back into his endless cycle of grudges, schemes, and reckless gambles. She rejected his apology, not with anger, but with a firm resolve that this was about survival, about refusing to let Billy's chaos consume her any longer. Her rejection left Billy gutted, more alone than he had ever felt. Without Sally, Abbott Communications lost its anchor, his family's faith in him fractured further, and his obsession with Kane became a glaring mirror of his inability to change. Even as he pleaded for forgiveness, he revealed that the obsession remained. Kane still haunted him, drove him, consumed him. Sally's rejection, though painful, became the stark truth he could not escape. Billy's real enemy wasn't Kane, it was himself. Meanwhile, Jack, Diane, and Kyle regrouped, whispering strategies about Kane and the havoc he could unleash. They knew Billy was a liability, that his rage and unpredictability could blow up everything if they didn't get a handle on him first. The Abbotts agreed they had to be smart, control Billy before he spiraled further, before his war with Kane dragged them all down with him. Back at society, Michael tried to shift focus, inviting Lauren to dinner with the pretense of romance. He told her he wanted to make her feel special, but Lauren's instincts told her otherwise. She sensed a deeper purpose in the evening, a shadow of secrets weighing on her husband's conscience. She pressed him, asking where he had been before dinner, questioning if he was working for Victor Newman again. Her eyes narrowed with suspicion as she warned him that if he was hiding the truth, if he was letting Victor lure him into something dangerous, it would be unforgivable. She reminded him that there would be no turning back if he chose deception over honesty. Michael, cornered, was spared momentarily by an unexpected phone call from their son, Fenmore von Baldwin. But Lauren wasn't fooled. The reprieve only delayed the inevitable. Once the call ended, she returned to her questions, demanding answers. Michael, realizing he could no longer keep the truth hidden, confessed that Kane Ashby was attempting to destroy Genoa City from the shadows. He admitted that he might be the only one capable of stopping him, that he was drawn into the fight whether he liked it or not. Lauren listened, torn between fear for her husband's safety and fury at his secrecy. She gave him one last chance to be honest, to stay clean with her, to choose transparency over deception. While Michael grappled with his marriage and his loyalty, Billy found himself unraveling. Sally's rejection forced him to stare at the mirror of his own failures. He had confessed his obsession, admitted his schemes, acknowledged his betrayals, but even in his contrition, he could not detach from the patterns that had always destroyed him. Sally saw through him. She refused to be dragged back into his endless battles, into a relationship where she was collateral damage to his grudges. She chose herself, walking away with dignity and resolve, leaving Billy broken but also confronted with the truth that he was his own undoing. For Billy to evolve, he would need a complete transformation, a willingness to abandon the childish, self-destructive impulses that defined him. But as it stood, he looked less like a man seeking redemption and more like a reckless boy repeating the same mistakes. Even Kane, who had cut ties with him, recognized Billy's instability. Their contract dissolved because Billy was too much of a wild card, and no one, not Sally, not Kane, not even his family, trusted him to hold himself together. His threats toward Victor Newman were laughable, a reckless fantasy that only underscored how little respect Billy commanded. Sally's decision to leave him became the clearest signal of all. Billy was adrift, consumed by his own toxic cycles, and unless he broke free, he would destroy himself completely. The question now loomed, could Billy ever grow up, or was he destined to remain a perpetual train wreck, dragging down everyone who dared to care for him? Billy Abbott stood in the quiet aftermath of Sally's rejection, the sound of her footsteps echoing away from the park overlook as though each step carved another scar into his chest. He had begged, confessed, promised change, but the words had fallen like ash. Sally had seen through him, her eyes hardened not by cruelty but by clarity. For the first time, Billy was forced to confront the horrifying truth that maybe there was no one left to save him. He leaned against the cold metal railing of the overlook, the night air pressing down on him, and muttered curses under his breath about Kane Ashby, the man who had somehow become both scapegoat and obsession. But if Billy were honest with himself, Kane wasn't the problem. The problem was the reflection staring back at him in the darkness, a man who had burned every bridge, lost every anchor, and still clung to vengeance like it was the only lifeline left. Across town, Sally sank into a chair at Crimson Lights, her hands trembling as she clutched a cup of coffee she couldn't bring herself to drink. Chelsea spotted her from across the room and slid into the seat opposite her, studying the haunted expression on Sally's face. "Billy?" Chelsea asked softly, already knowing the answer. Sally exhaled a shaky breath and nodded, explaining in halting words how Billy had begged for forgiveness, how he admitted to his betrayals but still couldn't let go of his fixation on Kane. Chelsea, who knew Billy's patterns all too well, shook her head sadly. She told Sally that Billy had always been a man who mistook obsession for passion, chaos for purpose. "You deserve better than being dragged into his storms," Chelsea whispered. But Sally, torn, admitted that part of her still wanted to believe Billy could change. That fragile thread of hope was the cruelest part, it kept her tethered even when she knew better. Meanwhile, the Abbott mansion buzzed with tension. Jack paced in front of the fireplace, his voice rising as he told Diane and Kyle that Billy's war against Kane was spiraling out of control. Diane urged Jack to step in, to find a way to rein Billy in before his self-destruction dragged the family name through the mud again. Kyle, nursing a headache from his drunken fight with Audra, groaned in frustration. "Billy doesn't listen to anyone," Kyle muttered. "He doesn't care who he hurts as long as he's chasing his next grudge." Jack clenched his jaw, admitting that Kyle wasn't wrong, but insisted they couldn't give up on Billy entirely. "He's family," Jack said, his voice breaking slightly. Diane, however, wasn't as forgiving. She reminded Jack that family loyalty had already cost them too much. "If Billy explodes, it's not just his life, it's all of us who suffer the fallout," Diane warned. She urged Jack to think strategically, not sentimentally. Control Billy first. Neutralize Kane second. That was the only path forward. Audra, never one to retreat quietly, found herself back at society later that night, smirking as she recounted her clash with Kyle to Tucker. She mocked Kyle's reliance on his parents, deriding the Abbotts as a family of enablers. Tucker, amused but calculating, listened carefully as Audra speculated about Billy's vendetta against Kane. "If Billy's this unhinged," Audra said with a sly smile, "maybe we can use that chaos to our advantage." Tucker raised an eyebrow, intrigued by the idea of letting Billy's instability create openings for them. Audra leaned closer, her eyes gleaming with mischief. "Sometimes the best way to win isn't to fight your enemy, it's to let them destroy themselves." Back at society, Michael tried desperately to salvage his dinner with Lauren. He held her hand across the table, insisting that his work with Victor wasn't what she thought it was. Lauren's eyes narrowed, her voice sharp with suspicion. "You expect me to believe that?" she demanded. "After everything Victor has pulled, after everything you've done for him in the past, you want me to just smile and nod?" Michael's shoulders sagged. He confessed again about Kane, about the threat he believed Kane posed to Genoa City, but Lauren wasn't reassured. She warned him that Kane might not be the only danger. Victor Newman was a greater threat than anyone when it came to entangling people in his schemes. "If you lie to me, Michael, if you put yourself on Victor's leash again, I won't forgive you," she said firmly. Michael's throat tightened as he promised her that this time was different, though even he wasn't sure he believed it. The weight of his secrets pressed heavily on him, and Lauren could sense it. As dawn broke, Billy returned to the Abbott estate, disheveled and hollow-eyed. Jack confronted him immediately, demanding to know what he thought he was doing. Billy, defensive, snapped that Jack had no right to judge him. He shouted that Kane was out there plotting, waiting to strike, and that someone needed to stop him. Diane tried to interject, urging Billy to calm down, but he rounded on her with venom, accusing her of trying to control him just like everyone else. Kyle, watching from the sidelines, muttered that Billy sounded like a lunatic, which only fueled Billy's rage further. Jack finally grabbed his brother by the shoulders and shook him, his voice raw as he shouted, "You're not fighting Kane, Billy, you're fighting yourself." The words hung in the air, a painful truth that Billy refused to acknowledge. He tore himself free and stormed out, leaving the family shaken and fearful of what he might do next.